Silence! Welcome to Smash Fiction, where we pit two or more characters against one another in a battle of strength, or wits, or keeping children in line through whatever means may be necessary that are in no way morally dubious. I said silence. And see who would win. This week, the paragons of educational discipline, Dolores Umbridge versus Agatha Trunchbull. Dear Sarah, how are you? Does the back of your hand still have that I will not tell lies scar? I hope you've been able to stay out of Umbridge's sight. She sounds awful. But Trunchbull is pretty awful too. Yesterday, she threw me out of a window. And all I did was eat a few pieces of candy in class. I was hungry and lunch wasn't for another hour. You know, I think she's been more awful than usual because of Umbridge. I heard her muttering about the district super informant or something. Is that like the principal's principal? Anyway, I think this super informant is gonna grade Trunchbull and Umbridge, and whoever has the worst school is gonna be fired. Something like that. Or at least that's what it seems like, because Trunchbull's really freaking out. She's been putting way more kids in the chogi than usual, and I haven't been put in there yet. Pretty sure if she catches me eating in class, though, I'm gonna finally know what it's like in there. It's been a while since I got an owl from you. Please write back soon so I know you're still okay. Your favorite little brother, J.D. Scotese. Mr. Scotese, though woefully ignorant of what a district superintendent is, was correct about the situation that the two women are in. Budget cuts mean school districts cannot afford to allow their schools to continue underperforming. Miss Umbridge and Miss Trunchbull were brought in to fix the worst of the riff-raff of their respective schools, but unfortunately only one can remain. That is why I, Kit Mulcairn, and you will refer to me as Miss Mulcairn. That is why I am your district super judge for this match.
Miss Mulcairn.
Miss Mulcairn for this match.
All right.
Mr. Mulcairn.
I think Dan was expecting more of a Mrs.
I know.
Yeah, I didn't think I would find out this way.
My marital status has nothing to do with this match. It's none of your
Why are
business.
these women married?
Representing Dolores Umbridge are Mr. Daniel Mulcairn.
Expecto bullshitum.
And guest host, Miss Marissa Bond.
I hope you don't take umbrage with my Trunch bullshit. I'm so sorry.
Representing Agatha Trunchbull are Mr. Miles Schneiderman.
An argument about how Umbridge can win this match is like one of Mr. Wormwood's stolen cars. It only runs for a little while before the engine falls out and you realize the whole thing is full of sawdust and lies.
And our guest host from the Unspoiled Podcast Network, Miss Natasha Winters.
Nothing says, take me seriously, like your secret police being a mob of pimple-faced tweens.
In order to determine who will go first, I had each team spend 8 hours in detention. How they chose to spend their time would be the determining factor for which team would go first.
Oh no.
Daniel, like a good boy, decided to start cleaning the whiteboard of the accumulated dry erase marker stains. Meanwhile, Marissa took it upon herself to remove every last disgusting piece of gum that had accumulated underneath the desks. By the time I arrived to dismiss them, however, well, Daniel had in fact cleaned the whiteboard, but then drew a massive Trogdor the Burninator, using permanent marker no less.
Daniel.
It's called an improvement.
And Marissa, inspired by Mr. Mulcairn's deviancy, used the accumulated gum to create an effigy of Trogdor the Burninator and placed it on the teacher's chair.
What, you wanted an apple?
We had to discard that chair due to the gum's persistent nature. In the other classroom, little Miles began detention by working on his English homework, a fantastic use of time, while Natasha began her assigned reading, Tolstoy's War and Peace. By the time I had returned, Mr. Schneiderman had finished writing a manifesto on the evils of capitalism and its negative effects on public education.
I mean, this checks out, yeah.
And Natasha had somehow not only finished reading War and Peace, but also recorded multiple episodes of Unspoiled on the book and uploaded them to her Patreon as exclusive content. I'm not sure that this goes against the school's rule that states students cannot sell products on school property, so Team Trunchbull will be going first.
Loopholes.
Team Trunchbull, you wanted to be in this match. You got to be in this match. Now give me your opening arguments.
Dolores Umbridge is nothing but a punk-ass wannabe desperate hall monitor with a penchant for handing out little Xeroxed infraction tickets to underclassmen. Unauthorized tickets she wrote herself on a Microsoft Word template printed out of the school library and cut unevenly, despite her best efforts, with the paper cutter in the art classroom. Does she, at minimum, have a principled and passionate hatred of children the way that Trunchbull does, as a firm foundation upon which to base her despicable behavior? No. She's just a brown-nosing hanger-on of the worst kind who seeks out the person with the most power to bully and inflict harm and aligns herself with them, regardless of her own beliefs. Umbridge is barely capable of manipulating a single high school student with PTSD. And it's clear that everyone in her class is constantly on the edge of their seat waiting for someone to talk shit to her so they can all join in on this show of backbone. Unlike Trunchbull, nobody we've ever seen leaves an encounter with Dolores seeming cowed or frightened, but instead all appear to simmer from that moment on with a perverse desire to thwart her simply for the sake of it. Dolores Umbridge can't even deal out her punishment of writing lines in public because she knows that her power stems solely from the Ministry, and their disapproval of her methods would deflate her authority completely. Trunchbull can whip a child around her head and hurl her like a shot put in full view of all the students and teachers because she knows there isn't a soul who's going to do or say shit about it. Umbridge, however, wields no such authority. Not one of the teachers fears her at all or even takes her seriously, and their obvious disdain rolls off them in waves that the students feel and replicate. Part of this disdain doubtless comes from the fact that she is barely a competent wizard. There are some pretty compelling arguments to suggest that she did not teach Defense Against the Dark Arts as a practical course because she was simply not capable of doing so. When the Weasley twins create unstoppable fireworks or a patch of swamp in a Hogwarts hallway across which students must be ferried in a boat, the teachers sit back and refuse to help, amusedly watching her ineffective attempts to remove the swamp or subdue the fireworks. The swamp has not been removed by the end of the books, and the fireworks appear to simply peter out on their own, resisting all of her attempts to remove them. There are some people who seem to wield inherent power, compelling others to their side through sheer force of personality and the immutable belief that they can mete out punishments so severe they will be whispered about by future generations. The Trunchbull, for example, while gone from her school in the end, will certainly live on in legends that later students will doubtless assume are exaggerations. Dolores Umbridge is not one of these. She is a joke, a sad cautionary tale of a near squib with an inferiority complex who had no avenue to vent her impotent, self-loathing rage than on hapless school children who laughed behind their hands at her as she did it. Dolores Umbridge can't even keep Hogwarts under control with the full weight of the Ministry behind her. Her mind and her heart are weak, and everyone knows it.
As Natasha alluded to, this is a match about exerting power. Umbridge's power comes from the Ministry of Magic. She's able to do what she does in the Order of the Phoenix, thanks to her ties with the government and her ability to disseminate propaganda through the media. Agatha Trunchbull's power comes from her complete lack of fucks, combined with the fact that she's a gigantic muscle-bound Olympian who hammer throws children over the school gates and tosses them out windows when they break the rules. She's able to do what she does in Matilda, and for many, many years before Matilda, because there was simply nobody who could stop her. Can you imagine someone walking into Crunchem Hall and saying, Miss Trunchbull, I'm afraid you no longer have the backing of the school board? She would pick that person up, literally throw them out of her school. If she gets a good enough release, they might clear the spikes, but, you know, it's the off-season, and continue her reign of terror, because her power comes from herself. Umbridge got her teaching job by government decree, despite being grossly unqualified. Nobody knows how the Trunchbull got her job, despite being what she is, but I'm gonna go ahead and say she walked in one day and took it. After all, we do know how she got her house, and that was by murdering her brother and hiding his will. Regardless of how it happened, the Trunchbull is a veteran of the education industry by now, whereas Umbridge was only there for a year, and let me tell you, as someone who worked in education for over a decade, when it comes to keeping a group of kids in line, nothing in the world beats actual classroom experience like Trunchbull has. Except maybe creating an oppressive culture of fear that survives numerous generations of students and is enforced via browbeating, the threat of physical injury, and a makeshift Iron Maiden. Incidentally, the most honest but least creative name for an Iron Maiden cover band. Or maybe instead of classroom experience, it would be better to have experience turning your niece into a psychologically broken household slave. Now, when you think about it, the Trunchbull basically invented house elves. No matter what tactic you want to try, Trunchbull has the experience edge. She is physically awesome, deviously cunning, willing to torture you with the things that you love, and willing to hold you in the air by your ears if that doesn't work. She holds a deep belief that the best kind of school is the kind in which children are neither seen nor heard, and she knows how to create that environment. On her first day at Crunchem Hall, Matilda meets an older girl named Hortensia, who tells her, quote, "If you survive your first year, you may just manage to live through the rest of your time here. But many don't survive. They get carried out on stretchers screaming. I've seen it often." After hearing about the numerous times Hortensia has been punished for pranking the Trunchbull, Matilda comments that going to Crunchem Hall is like a war. "You're darn right it's like a war," Hortensia says, "and the casualties are terrific. We are the Crusaders, the gallant army fighting for our lives, with hardly any weapons at all, and the Trunchbull is the Prince of Darkness, the foul serpent, the fiery dragon with all the weapons at her command." Crunchem Hall, under the reign of Trunchbull, is like humanity under the reign of the machines in the Matrix, or the Star Wars galaxy under the reign of the Empire. Is there a resistance? Sure. Does it matter? Not until the kid with psychic power shows up. Umbridge could have been thwarted by any sufficiently motivated group of Hogwarts students. It takes a telekinetic child prodigy to defeat the Trunchbull. By the way, isn't it weird that her last name is Trunchbull? Her brother's daughter is named Jennifer Honey, and Miss Honey isn't married, so we can assume that Honey is her father's name. Trunchbull isn't married either, so why doesn't she have the same name as her brother? Given her dismissive attitude toward the idea of marriage, I'm going to guess there was a Mr. Trunchbull at one point, but there sure the hell ain't one now. Divorce? Murder? Did she eat him like a praying mantis or a black widow? Is she an alien? She does have the apparently supernatural ability to know which child just pranked her, and there's textual evidence to support a theory that Miss Trunchbull is not in fact human, as she states multiple times, with what appears to be complete sincerity, that she was never a child or a baby. Umbridge is a pencil-pushing racist who got in over her head. Trunchbull's a force of nature. Not even other adults dare to stand up to her. She's got a built-in advantage over Umbridge simply because the person conducting the Trunchbull's inspection is probably going to be intimidated into blind submission like everyone else. If a kid starts to cause trouble, the Trunchbull will instantly know who it is and quickly and efficiently remove them from the immediate vicinity. And I dare the inspector to say something, given how obvious it is that she could easily do the same to him or her. By the end of Order of the Phoenix, the entire school is working against Umbridge, and despite all her educational decrees, there's nothing she can do about it. She's powerless, because while she is great at being hated, she's terrible at being feared. Agatha Trunchbull is fucking fear incarnate. While Toad-Faced McGee over here is desperately dodging dung bombs, the Trunchbull will be overseeing an entire school's worth of clean hands, short hair, and shut mouths.
Finished?
Yes.
Lovely. Team Umbridge. The time has come for opening arguments, whether you want to give them or not.
Gentlefolk, think back to high school. Oh yeah, we're going that kind of dark. Of course you can remember high school. Neither pharmacological science nor recreational drugs have advanced enough to fully block out that shit show, and we all know it. If you happen to have good memories of high school, I am sorry to be the one to tell you this, but what you are actually remembering is the experience of watching John Hughes movies. So, in high school, you had that teacher. Everyone had at least one. A teacher who seemed to delight when you didn't meet her standards. A teacher who kissed up to those higher than her on the ladder, who kept a tight ship, who had an axe to grind, and other mixed metaphors she would undoubtedly take points off your papers for using. The one for whom the only real lesson the student needed to learn was who was in charge, and she was that person. Now, imagine if that teacher of yours had access to incredible magical power, a high-level government job, and whose attitude was not just, fuck them kids, but more, fuck them Geneva Conventions. That teacher is Dolores Umbridge. Umbridge knows what the administration wants and how to do it just like they like it. She starts her first class by listing out the course objectives for her students. As a teacher, I felt immediately mounted into submission by this power move. I usually don't even remember that I have departmental course objectives to meet until sometime after midterms. Listing them day one? The head office is going to love that shit. But to those equal to or below her on the academic food chain, Umbridge don't just get mad, she gets even. You want to start a club that helps fill in the gaps in what she's teaching? Whoops, that's now illegal. Someone goes over her head to get something done? Guess who now has ultimate authority and punishment? You want to talk to a teacher about the bullying and departmental oppression you're facing? Too bad, now the teachers will lose their jobs for talking about anything that isn't directly related to their subjects. This is a woman who adopted the title of High Inquisitor without a single thought of, gee, that could sound bad. Yeah, it does. And yeah, it's accurate. And yeah, she doesn't care. But like any effective and terrifying administrator, she doesn't just micromanage. No. Umbridge knows when to delegate, when she needs to divide the students, and how to sow distrust and betrayal. Petty tyrants know their own, and she offers to those who are craven enough a shred of power, the slightest advantages. To those students, cough cough Slytherin, who judge their value only against those who have less than they do, the opportunity to hinge for her as a member of the inquisitorial squad is not just an opportunity to be less afraid, but to be the one instilling fear. Now, like any good serial killer, bonsai enthusiast, or upper-level manager, Umbridge believes in pruning in order to manifest her vision on other people. She fired both Trelawney and Hagrid. Both of these decisions probably looked good on paper. Divination was not a thriving program, and Hagrid, bless his guileless hirsute heart, was not a great teacher, but was a huge legal liability. Were her decisions based mostly out of tyranny, bullying, and racism? Undoubtedly. Does it still look like a sound decision on paper? Yep, because acontextual data is the bread and butter of administration. And, fellow advocates, if you perhaps were thinking, oh good, she hasn't mentioned the torture. Oh yeah, she straight up tortures children! She has a pen that if you write with it, it cuts open your hand and uses your own blood as ink. She makes children write lines in their own blood. Though, it does remind me of how educational theorist Emile Durkheim once said, the fuck is that shit? Does the torture make her an effective administrator? I can't speak to that, but I can say it will be effective in getting the little crotch dumplings to be shutting of the fuck up. Torture has been proven to be ineffective in getting the truth out of a person being interrogated, but it is particularly effective for traumatizing people into hollow-eyed obedience. So, hurrah? But the question is, will her methods keep her students in line long enough for the administrative inspection? Of course it will. This is an evil that systems favor. When you look at it, everything seems to be running smoothly because everything that doesn't fit with the hegemony's model is squashed, made invisible, and disappeared. That's right. Get ready for Harry Potter and the depressingly relevant analogy. Umbridge is systemic evil, not just the kind that is comfortable with the status quo and, hey, isn't it weird that the status quo always seems to favor her? Oh, well, best not to think about it too much. No. This is the kind who believes that she has the right to hold everyone else accountable to her standard, a standard she designs to keep her in power. Yes, she is bound up by the rules, but she is the one writing those rules, and she is writing them in your blood.
Trunchbull is scary in a way purposefully intended to scare kids. She's loud, physically imposing, abrasive, and prone to anger at the drop of a hat. But that sort of person is really only scary to kids at the beginning, because it quickly becomes obvious that those types of people are just bullies. Bullies like to throw their weight around when they believe themselves to have the power. But all it takes is one moment of doubt, one flaw in the armor, for a bully like Trunchbull to be exposed for what they truly are. Weak and insecure. so many of Trunchbull's attempts at establishing order end up backfiring on her. We see this quite early on in the story when she hammer throws Amanda Thripp over the fence of the school. Instead of being impaled on the sharp iron fence, Amanda ends up landing safely in a bed of flowers and happily stands up to wave at the other students, who cheer for her. Later on, when Trunchbull forces Bruce Bogtrotter to eat an entire cake in front of the student body, the students again end up cheering for Bruce in a display that completely infuriates Trunchbull. On multiple occasions, her attempts at expressing her power inadvertently end up increasing her students' bonds with each other. And when this happens, she screams and gets angry and forces the children to stay 5 hours extra that day. These aren't the actions of a person with high status, who has confidence in their power and authority, and is able to exact precise, efficient punishment against those who misbehave. These are the actions of a person of low status, terrified of losing what little power they have, and even young children are capable of picking up on that vulnerability when it's so blatantly displayed before them. One of Trunchbull's biggest struggles in this match will be maintaining any level of respect from her students. She is much more easily made a target of ridicule than Umbridge is, as even the most basic prank, like say, having a newt put on her, leads Trunchbull to dance uncontrollably, causing the kids watching to laugh uproariously at her. She's very easily bamboozled. Matilda and Miss Honey send her running back and forth through her house ineffectively just by knocking things over at the right moment. She's terrified of snakes, which seems to extend into anything reptilian or amphibious. She's also deeply superstitious, reacting with fear at a black cat. Matilda's torments are so effective largely because of how scared Trunchbull is of the supernatural. Once the magic-using Umbridge, or her loyal deputized students, learn that Trunchbull is her biggest rival, they'll start tormenting her secretly with Wingardium Leviosas, and Trunchbull will come completely unwound. Even those students who go in wanting to follow the rules will find that Trunchbull has made it almost impossible to do so because of how arbitrary her discipline is. When she first appears in the story, she immediately gives a student detention for no apparent reason, and berates children for having socks that are, quote, too pink. Compare that to Umbridge, whose disciplinary measures are absolutely disproportionate to whatever offense the student might have committed, but they don't come out of nowhere. Umbridge sets up rules that, while they are often extreme versions of more standard educational rules, are based on rules and can be followed. The children will be more willing to follow rules that they can understand, but Trunchbull's eagerness to mete out punishment, whether or not it's deserved, will merely galvanize students into rebelling. Umbridge's students will say, I can avoid punishment if I behave. Trunchbull's students will say, she's going to punish us no matter what we do, so we might as well fight back. Umbridge, for all her faults as a character, does have a passion for order and efficiency, and can, very capably, run an effective, if unhappy, school. Trunchbull's only passion is in tormenting students. She doesn't care about teaching or guiding children. She doesn't care about hiring the right staff and faculty. She turns a completely blind eye to the physical infrastructure of the school. From an audience's perspective, Umbridge's true nastiness as a character takes a while to fully unfold. But it's clear from Trunchbull's first appearance in Matilda that she has no place running a school. It's clear to those who read the book. It's clear to those who watch the movie. And it will be clear to the school district administrators too.
Finished?
Yes.
Good. It is now time for the rebooties. I will have order! Team Trunchbull, tally ho.
That is such a crock.
Yeah, for real. I was hearing a lot about how, Umbridge, when she hears a club is being formed, she makes it illegal. She tortures people. I've just heard from Dan a lot of stuff about how, Umbridge's students wouldn't fight back because of her system, whereas Trunchbull's students would. Can you explain the fact that none of that shit is reflected in what actually happens in these stories? Because none of Umbridge's shit works, the revolution increases every time she tries to quash it down, and in the case of Trunchbull, there are a bunch of kids who are cowed into submission by her methods. We don't see any direct revolution against her until Matilda arrives.
I'm starting to wonder if we read entirely different texts. Yes, Umbridge had an insurgency group among the students, but first, they were not directly trying to depose her. They just wanted to learn defense against the dark arts. And second, she successfully quashed them by doing what she does best, turning one of their students into a mole for her, and that ultimately brought down not only the group, but also also Dumbledore, allowing her to become the head of the school entirely. And that group didn't meet again until the final moments of the book.
In response to what Miles was saying about Trunchbull seemingly having the students on lockdown, Matilda's the one who kind of like puts the last nail in her coffin because she has telekinesis. But like the things that Matilda does earlier, like, you know, she cheers for Bruce and that like encourages him to like eat the chocolate cake and embarrass Trunchbull.
He just liked cake and he had a big stomach. That's the only thing that happened there.
This is
that
a true
would
story.
totally have worked if not for that kid being weird.
But it shows that the entire school was willing to rise up and cheer loudly for him.
And that accomplished what exactly?
It showed the chinks in Trunchbull's armor. It showed that she's a raving lunatic who doesn't have the high status that she seems to claim to. It made her look like a fool, is basically what it did.
And in your own opening arguments, you talked about Hortensia having pranks against Trunchbull throughout her entire career there.
I think that it's unfair to judge whether or not a teacher has control over their school by whether or not any kids misbehave ever. I think that's absurd and unreasonable. Of course, kids are just going to misbehave. Authority inspires them to misbehave. It's going to happen either way. But the difference between how Trunchbull handles it and the response of students to her, they decide that they're going to cheer this kid on with eating the cake after he's halfway through the fucking thing already. They are dead silent up until that point because all of them assume that he is going to throw up long before he gets there.
Yeah,
and once they realize that he's going to win, they're like, oh shit, well, maybe I can cheer safely because I'm not going to look like an ass by the end of this. Umbridge has a wall of decrees that she is feverishly scribbling out to keep up with all of the rule breaking going on around her. She is reacting. She is not in charge. There is nothing about the way she's handling these situations that is proactive in anticipating the way people are going to behave. She is seeing rule breaking that she hasn't even fucking thought of yet. And then going, oh shit, God, no, let's write a rule for this. And then foolishly bans things thinking that's gonna work, when in fact, it does nothing but make everybody go, oh, she banned the thing? I want to know what's in the thing.
It's stated explicitly when she bans the Quibbler issue with Harry's interview in it that the act of banning it only made everyone want to read it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll grant you guys that, you know, bans on certain activities or, you know, certain individual pieces of literature can indeed increase the popularity of those activities or pieces of literature. But to say that, like, Umbridge's decrees are inherently foolhardy is to completely miss the miles and miles of foolhardiness that Trunchbull exhibits. Like, the thing with the cake, that was her going in, wanting to show off her power, and thinking that she was stronger than this kid. Like, Trunchbull is basically a child. She is in the body of a full-grown woman, but she's a child. Like, she doesn't exercise good judgment. She acts purely on instinct, and there's no, like, forethought to what she does. It's just all sort of impulse.
Speaking of looking like a fool and making mistakes, I just want to push back against this portrayal you've put forward of Umbridge as some kind of fucking mastermind, because actually she's an idiot. Natasha mentioned earlier the thing about how the Trunchbull responds to the kids fighting back against her. Both these teachers get pranked by their students, but Umbridge, her response to getting pranked is to completely fail to figure out who the culprits are, and thus punish none of them. Whereas Trunchbull's response to finding out she's been pranked is to instantly discover who the person was who did it, and throw them in the fucking chokey. And I also want to point out, Umbridge is completely unsubtle. What she's doing is obvious the entire year. Hermione plays like a fucking fiddle at the end of that story. She gives herself away entirely. And then, when she's in the middle of a forest full of centaurs, she insults them and calls them racist names to their face. Do not give me this shit about Umbridge being smart or competent.
I've never said that she was smart or competent. And that's not even something that I think is important for a good administrator. What matters is the fact that she is effective.
You have to be competent to be effective.
No, I don't think so. Not
I'm
when,
pretty sure you do.
Depending on the standards of what you want out of a school, which is quiet students. You don't have to be competent for that. What she has done is, whether she's obvious or not, she's still managing to make sure that the students are following these edicts. And yes, you pointed out the centaurs, and that's fine, because that was the only way she was removed from the school, was not through the powers of the students, but due to a politically unstable herd of centaur and one giant deus ex machina. Literally, it was a giant who was a deus ex machina.
Took her out into the forest.
That is time. Team Umbridge. Naughty advocates deserve to be rebutted.
I won't deny it, Your Honor.
Natasha, you were saying that Trunchbull's sort of physically expressive forms of punishment were inherently better or more effective than Umbridge's. And I grant you that Trunchbull's punishments are more spectacular. It was like I was saying earlier, they're impulsive. They're off-the-cuff expressions of her hate and her frustrations. Umbridge's are way more effective because they're cold and precise and personal. She bans Harry from playing Quidditch for life. And I grant you that hurts Harry way more than any physical punishment ever could have.
I will grant you that Quidditch specifically was a good stroke on her part. But what I think Trunchbull has going for her is something that Matilda is kind of brilliant for realizing, and it's something I think that we can see in this administration right now, sidebar.
Metaphor.
If you decide to go all in on outrageous punishments, nobody's going to believe you when you try and tell them this is what's happening. You can go to your parents with I will not tell lies written on the back of your hand, or tell them that you got lifetime banned from Quidditch, and they'll be, this is outrageous, how dare you? If Harry had parents, sorry, Harry. But you can't go to your parents and tell them that your teacher picked up a little girl by her braids, wung her over their head, and chucked her over a wall, and expect your parents to listen to you for any amount of time in that moment, and then from then on, anything you say about this teacher is going to be couched in, yeah, but remember that time when she said she wung a student around over her head and then chucked her over a wall? I mean, I'm sure that this is probably exaggerated. And that's what I find scary about Trunchbull, is that she gets into this place that's like a mythical boogeyman type figure that is untouchable.
Her entire power structure is based on assuming that everybody has terrible parents that don't believe their children. That's not necessarily a secure power structure.
Yeah, as soon as parents outside a series of unfortunate events start sending their kids to this school,
it seems like a much more secure power structure, considering it's been going on for, we don't even know how long, but a long time, whereas Umbridge didn't last a year.
All I'm going to say is the British school system apparently has some things I have questions about.
Hey, look, you know what? Context doesn't always matter.
Actually, it's much better to count on parents to be more afraid of the government structure than of what is specifically happening to their children. And even Harry doesn't go forward and tell anybody about what is happening to him because of that level of psychological control that she's exerting over him. Moreover, you talk about how the entire school is working against Umbridge, but that's not entirely the case. Even though people are, the school is still going on. Classes still keep happening flawlessly. Exams are still going on. The school is still operating like a machine. Even if the teachers are sarcastic and the children are pranking, well, as you said, children are going to do that.
All right. Wait a second. Operating flawlessly? We had two boys summon their brooms, give her the finger, and sail out the door, leaving a swamp in their wake. There are fireworks shooting down the hallways into classrooms, and the teachers are like, oh, gee, I really wish I could put this out, but I'm not allowed to do anything outside of my subject matter, so I guess, Umbridge, you'll have to come take care of this. There is nothing but disruption once she's headmistress. She doesn't know how. She can't do it. She tries, and she cannot do it because she is bad at wizardry.
She can't get rid of the swamp. She doesn't know how to make Veritaserum.
No, but she knows how to get people across the swamp, and she knows who can make Veritaserum, which is the same thing as you need out of an administrator. What matters is that it keeps going.
I do want to respond to your earlier point, Marissa, by just reminding everyone that in this scenario, Umbridge does not have the blanket support of the government government, and she is not, acting on behalf of a massive, government propaganda machine. So those advantages are not going to be at her disposal here. And I also just want to remind everyone real quick that, in Matilda, we only see Trunchbull really dealing with the younger kids. A, it's stated that she hates them more than anyone else, and B, it's made clear that the younger kids challenge Trunchbull more than anyone else because they haven't learned the rules yet. The older kids, like Hortensia, who talk about all the times they did time in the chokey because of their pranks back when they were kids, have been beaten down, have learned not to screw with the system, not to screw with the Trunchbull. So I think you can see very clear evidence in Matilda that as the school years progress, the culture of fear that Trunchbull instills works its way into you, and the ability to create that kind of culture is vital in this scenario.
Just to kind of keep things in perspective, many of the students that resisted Umbridge were ones who had been fighting against forces of darkness and repression since day one of their attendance at Hogwarts. One of them is a literal chosen one, lightning bolt on the forehead chosen one. And the rest of them only joined Dumbledore's army because of their leadership. The fact that they named the group Dumbledore's Army shows that they needed inspiration from Dumbledore and the Order of the Phoenix to mount anything approaching effective resistance. They also needed a freaking secret magic room in Hogwarts in order to hold these secret meetings, and Umbridge still manages to find it and blow the wall off of it.
Dan, they named it Dumbledore's Army because they knew that was what Umbridge was most afraid of. Because it's fucking obvious, because she's stupid and unsubtle.
And Trunchbull is subtle?
She got away, I'm sorry, she got away with killing her brother and taking his money and property.
Order, Mr. Schneiderman. Also, I just intercepted an owl carrying a letter. The envelope has a little lightning bolt on the front. Oh, damn letter opener. Dear JD, I'm sorry I haven't been able to write you for a while. Umbridge made another rule. This time about how we can't send letters until she or one of her little student inquisitors reads it first. I had to sneak into the aviary just to get this to you, and I almost got caught. Thankfully, Umbridge's goons are pretty stupid, because I fooled one by dressing up 3 owls in a trench coat and throwing my voice. The idiot actually believed the owls were a government aviary inspector. Anyway, Umbridge has been even more of a monster than usual, so I decided to do something about it. I heard this school has its own magical room, kind of like Hogwarts' Room of Requirement, but it's called the Lightning Room.
What? Oh no!
Well, it's real. I found it, and it's pretty strange, but really powerful. I think I might have solved both of our problems. The way the room works is, if you know where it's hidden, you just have to walk past the section of blank wall 3 times while thinking of a strange scenario and the people you want to have involved. So, remember Toy Story 3? Remember Sunnyside Daycare that was run by that tyrant Lotso Huggin' Bear? Well, I thought it'd be so funny if Umbridge and Trunchbull became toys for kindergartners. And they did. In the Lightning Room, I was there at Sunnyside, and they were dolls motionless on the ground. When I left the Lightning Room, Umbridge had disappeared. Her inquisitors are still trying to enforce her rules, but it's only a matter of time before we get someone better in charge. I hope this means your school's better off too. Your favorite big sister, Sarah Rose. Well, that would explain the disappearances. Since Miss Umbridge and Miss Trunchbull were careless enough to be foiled by a child's will, I do believe they should escape Sunnyside under their own power. Or maybe they'll enjoy their life as dolls and take charge. Does not matter to me. Team Umbridge, how does your tyrannical teacher adapt to their new toy life?
So Umbridge, when transformed into a toy, winds up as a little stuffed toad in a pink dress. We got to get that out here so we kind of, have a mental image of what's going on.
Princess
Sure.
hat and wand, of course.
Yep.
We'll put it in the visual companion.
That's right. We got to give something for the fan artists to work on
That's right.
while they listen to this.
Her defense coloration, in order to keep from getting destroyed, is that she is too ugly and unsettling to play with.
That's her defense in life as well.
You know what? Don't knock it. Some of us have to do with what we got.
She's very good at, hiding amongst the toys, just making sure that she's never where like a kid saw her last, just in case one of them, for whatever reason, wants to play with this hideous toy. But definitely like keeps on the move, make sure that she stays out of reach of those grubby little sticky hands that those children have.
She'll also start to disappear the fun and popular toys, leaving only the educational ones.
Yeah, and you know, much in the way that she refused to teach any sort of like practical application of defense against the dark arts, she makes sure that like any toy with even vaguely dangerous elements gets kicked to the curb. So, you know, no hard plastic, no like googly eyes, nothing that can like detach and be swallowed. Basically, it's just going to be alphabet blocks, and like not the wood ones either, like the big soft fluffy ones. That's basically all that's going to be in here.
Lead-based paint is still allowed, though, because kids need to learn not to put things in their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are both 80s characters, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, if it worked for Charles Dickens, you know?
And of course, there'll be books around. Only reading learners, though. Nothing with adventure that might incite, I don't know, vigor or bouncing about.
Yeah, I mean, those kids are going to learn to see Spot run by the end of this. And like in the meantime, you know, moving away from the actual children, she's definitely going to start deputizing some of the other toys. The chatter telephone is going to be used as an informant. She's going to ban Ken from seeing Barbie. Lotso is going to attempt to put together a resistance group, but once Umbridge finds out, she'll force them to stitch, "I must not try to subvert the power structure" on the back of their hands. It's really nasty, really, really unsettling.
Very, very tiny stitch work.
So what's her goal in all this?
You know, to have the most orderly, well-run, unhappy daycare in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
That's how kids learn.
Happiness is an impediment.
That's just science, you know?
Charming. Team Trunchbull. You made a name for yourself throwing around children, but now they throw you around. Tell me about that.
I think we should probably preface this by saying that neither Natasha nor myself have ever seen Toy Story 3. So.
Indeed.
Oh.
Correct.
Oh my.
First off, Trunchbull is going to have a different look as a toy rather than the sort of horseback riding type outfit that she had in the school. She's going to be more action figure style in a wrestling onesie. Show off her
Believe it
calves.
or not, this was not my idea.
You cut me off, Miles. I was going to make that very comment.
This was my plan all along. I just really wanted to get Trunchbull in a onesie. And
I mean, in or out of it.
Don't we all? Yeah. Porque no los dos.
And she is going to, every day, it's weird, another toy is gonna have its legs in one corner of the room and its head in the other corner of the room. There is gonna be this growing pile of torsos in the middle. It's remarkable. It will begin to look like these torsos are turning into a building. They're being used as bricks, piled on top of one another, until she has a school again to run, built of the bodies of those whom she has decimated and destroyed.
Oh my God.
Right.
And it will be a place that she can teach in peace, and there will not be any children hurt anywhere, because this horrifying pile of torsos is certainly not going to be a place that kids are excited to play.
Yeah, you guys insinuated that Trunchbull doesn't care about education. She absolutely cares about education. She cares very deeply and passionately that school should be a certain way, and now this one is.
Oh, man.
All in all, you're just another brick in the Barbie wall.
That's right. And Trunchbull is not one to see an obstacle and then not try to conquer it. So as soon as she becomes a doll, it's going to be like, all right, so I dominated this place. Great.
Yep.
And it helps that given that she is so oversized in the human world, in this world, she is now basically more like an American Girl doll.
She needs a lot of torsos, is what we're saying.
Yeah, and exactly. And those calves are like bigger than most of the toys alone.
And she's going to have articulation so that she can grab, she can crush with her thighs and break windpipes. Yeah. And again, the calves. It's just going to be intimidating.
She's got one of those things where it's like, even though it's, you know, American Girl size, this makes it kind of terrifying, but she's got one of those features where you like roll the arm back to a certain point and then it clicks. and then you, like, hit the button to have her launch something forward like a fucking shot put. But she's got so much articulation that she can actually hit the button herself, which makes her a deadly weapon in this particular daycare. Nobody's going to be able to stand against her.
So basically, she has the same sort of features as the Rookie of the Year action figure.
I don't know what that means, but yes.
Quaint. I must now leave to deliberate. Know that if I come back to find a thumbtack or a whoopee cushion on my chair, you'll all be trading in your beds for Iron Maidens. Toodaloo.
You've never seen Rookie of the Year, Miles?
Is that a movie?
Yeah, it's a 90s sports movie, which, as far as I can tell, are like your bread and butter.
Yeah, I actually think I did watch it now that you mention it. I just don't remember the specifics of what the doll looked like.
I don't know specifically that there was an action figure, but the whole premise is there's a kid who breaks his arm, and then it heals weird, so that if he, like, kind of tilts his arm back far enough, it, like, snaps into place, and then he can, like, snap it forward and deliver an incredible fastball, and he ends up playing for, I think it's the Yankees?
I think it's
oh my
Yankees.
God. I was more of an Angels in the Outfield kind of guy, personally.
Oh, sure. That supernatural element.
Must you really choose between 90s kids' sports movies?
Oh, Little Giants, of course. Y'all know I love Little Giants. I brought one of those characters into metafiction.
What about Mighty Ducks?
I mean, come on now. Classic.
Just making sure, Miles. I never know with you.
Well, Miles, based on what you said earlier, I definitely think there should be an Iron Maiden cover band called The Chokey.
I think there should be an Iron Maiden cover band called Makeshift Iron Maiden. Just like what it says on the tin.
Yep, sure. Very straightforward.
Oh man, Matilda's weird, man.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about this when we did Carrie vs. Matilda back in the day, but that book just like structurally is bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't get to the school until halfway through, and then they do the thing, all the stuff at the school, and then, like, it all of a sudden just becomes a story with her and Miss Honey, which is resolved, and then everything else kind of falls into place. Just a very odd story about a really smart girl who learns how to play pranks on people she doesn't like.
Mm-hmm. It definitely seems like the sort of power fantasy that, like, a very frustrated British school child would have had essentially every single day of his life. And yes, I am looking directly at Roald Dahl as I say this.
This was post his Spy and fucking lots of people work, right?
Yeah, this was 88.
Fucking lots of people. Indeed.
I did notice, watching the movie, that the woman who plays Miss Honey is Sheila from Army of Darkness.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow, that did not even click for me. I mean, I guess her costuming in those movies is a little different.
Yeah.
So
not a great film, but I do love the woman who played Trunchbull. She really knocked it out of the park.
Oh my God, she's so good.
I also have to say, I think Mara Wilson was a very good child actor in that movie.
I mean, yeah, she's a really interesting person. She like retired from acting and went on to do all kinds of other interesting stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, no, Trunchbull absolutely steals every scene she's in, and then like several scenes from the next movie you watch. I have to say though, watching Order of the Phoenix again, it struck me that I hate Umbridge so much, and I also think she's easily one of the best villains in Harry Potter, largely because of how much I hate her.
I've heard people argue that she is a greater villain than Voldemort.
Oh, absolutely. I have way stronger feelings about her than Voldemort.
Because, like, the banality of evil.
Like,
yeah. Well, she doesn't, actually,
but, you know, we never get to see any closure with that.
Right.
She's the type of evil that would rather live in denial so she can cling to temporary power rather than admit she was wrong, and thus compromising an entire population of vulnerable people in order to maintain a status quo. And so I ask you, who is really more evil? And also, who are we arguing about? Because I just got my timeline crossed into real life by accident, and goddammit, where is my escape into fantasy?
I don't know that there's, well, I was about to say I don't know that there's a case against Umbridge being more evil than Trunchbull, but again, Trunchbull did kill her brother.
Yeah, but that's one murder versus like, seriously, when you come down to it, one murder between someone you know versus a whole lot of people you don't, who your lives you're now putting into danger.
I personally think that Umbridge is a worse person than Trunchbull. But I think that Trunchbull would be better at maintaining order than Umbridge, for sure.
I totally agree.
I mean, is syphilis worse than gonorrhea? I kind of feel like that's the hair we're splitting at this point.
You know, I'm thinking about it more, though, Natasha, and you're right. Like, the whole Umbridge thing doesn't get any resolution in the story, which would be fine if she didn't come back. Like, if she was just in book 5 and, like, she got her resolution or whatever, then, like, sure, whatever. But then she's still around doing things in book 7.
Again. Yep.
Yeah, and, like, she never gets any kind of comeuppance that we can see.
And that's part of why I think that she wouldn't maintain order at a school, because she doesn't care about the order at the school. She cares about her own power. And if she sees things falling apart, she will abandon ship and figure out a way to maintain power another way that's easier, that she has more control over. Like returning to the ministry and basically becoming part of the Gestapo.
Yeah.
You know, it's completely separate, but it doesn't matter to her what she's doing. She just wants to wield power over somebody.
She is the embodiment of lawful evil.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she is. I think personally that Trunchbull would be a better defense against the dark arts teacher, even though she doesn't have magic powers.
I mean, I think she just has the one spell, which is throw person.
Well, it's just like, defense against dark arts, beat the fuck out of them. Punch Nazis, y'all.
Levicorpus.
And on this, we are agreed, because when it comes right down to it, like, it is very much Indiana Jones. If they're coming at you with the wand, has anyone tried the punch? I don't know. They don't talk about it.
No matter what happens in this match, and really we're all losers, no matter which one of these wins this match. But no matter what happens, I think we've managed to craft a compelling argument for why Agatha Trunchbull is more morally sound.
I didn't realize that that's what I was starting to argue for, but yeah, I guess you're right. So.
I guess so.
Silence! I've returned. And I've made my decision. First of all, I must say that both teams today performed exquisitely. I have not felt this torn in a match since Aquaman versus Namor.
Oh, shit.
No.
That was a long time ago.
And you were very torn.
I was literally going back and forth in my judgment with each rebooty. But I must render judgment, so the woman who will be keeping her position today is Miss Trunchbull. Team Umbridge. Team Umbridge. Though you must immediately clear out your desk. Know that you performed as beautifully as a wall covered in kitten plates. Truly. Truly.
I'd love to clear out my desk, but Team Trunchbull threw it out the window.
Yeah.
Look, it was too pink. You know what? I'm just glad that morality has won the day here.
No, it hasn't. There was no, unless Kit came back and said, so both of these people ended up mangled and mutilated. There was no way morality was going to win out.
Oh, they are stuck as dolls. Don't.
Okay, that's good. All right, that's good.
That's a good ending. Yeah, I'll take that.
Well, good job, you guys. You put up an extremely good fight, and I'm not surprised that you won.
I was worried, guys. I was starting to sweat over here, so extremely good job by you as well.
Whee! Oh, I'm feeling really good. 2 for 2.
Yeah, you're undefeated. This was always going to be a match to see whether Natasha or Marissa remained undefeated on Smash Fiction.
Yeah, that's right.
Ultimately.
Miss Marissa will just have to return again.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I started with a really bad pun. I'm not sure you're going to take me back.
Oh, that is like a prerequisite for being on this show.
That's the bar.
Ah, yes.
Congratulations,
Putting
you
that
stepped
bar on the
over it.
ground and then just rolling over it. That's
That's right.
Time for the kid thanks. Over to Twitter. Thank you to 3 owls in a short skirt and a long jacket, Earth Mofo, Cosplay Devotee, Cosplay Fiend, Sid Rabbit, Jackson Bruheim, Florian, CJ, Icon Jade, Alexander, Skyriddle, Robert Ramsey, Cool Down Now, Sean Boyd, Danielle, and Vander Turner. Over to Tumbles. Thank you to Pizamon, Sid Rabbit Blog, Ink the Cryptid, Not Very Bright Raven, and Fat Blunt 69.
Blunt 69.
Over to Facebook. Thank you to Jeff Polier, Adam Mayo, and Robert Ramsey.
And thanks also to Jonathan David Scotis and Sarah Rose, who were our 2 featured patrons this particular episode, turned into pen pals at the 2 worst schools that you could possibly imagine going to. So, we're sorry. But if you become a patron, maybe you won't get sent to the worst school ever. Who knows? It all kind of comes down to a roll of the old dice.
We make no promises.
Yep. We also wanted to thank Keiko Vance, who was the person who originally suggested this match to us. What seems like about 20 years ago, probably.
Something like that.
We've had this one on our list for a while. You know, as we mentioned in the 4th anniversary episode, we have a very long list. Some stuff goes on there and doesn't get picked for a minute. But we did, And I really enjoyed this one, largely because of the contributions of our two wonderful guests. So, Marissa, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being my partner.
Thank you so much for letting me be the albatross around your neck, Dan.
We were both albatrosses. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
True albatrosses were the friends we made along the way.
Absolutely. Marissa, do you have anything you want to plug? I'm not sure if you do any sort of projects.
I do have a story up on Split Lip Mag, and I have a project in the works that hopefully you will plug later once it's further advanced. So
I anticipate that we will be plugging that project
Excellent.
later. Yes.
I'm very excited.
Yes.
Whatever could that be?
Yes. But thanks also to Natasha, our other guest, our other returning champion guest. Natasha, we often say on our show when we have guests on, we're like, yeah, this person does like one of the best podcasts on the internet right now. You do like 20 of the best podcasts on the internet. So why don't you tell the listeners about that?
Aw, thanks. Yeah, so Unspoiled's whole gimmick is that one of the people that hosts, there's almost always two hosts, sometimes three, has read or watched whatever it is we're covering, and the other person hasn't and is going through it completely unspoiled. And the most popular show, of course, that we do is Harry Potter, currently doing Dresden Files, which is a favorite of mine. And I'm just really psyched because we're getting into book 10 now and it's just getting so good. And I just started about a year ago now. Jesus. I started Unspoiled Doctor Who, and I am the unspoiled one for that. And we just are getting to the end of season 3 now with Martha. And, who did not care for this last episode that I just recorded on, y'all? This is a tough one. This show is a real hot and cold for me. But thankfully, Jamie is very understanding about that and really is such a fangirl, but still manages to be like, these were all valid critiques. So it has been a lot of fun. And, you know, there's just so much out there. I've done at this point almost 30 shows more than 30, because right now I'm doing for patrons only with Miles, Twilight, the whole series plus the movies.
Yeah, we are.
I mean, if that's not worth the price of admission alone.
Listen.
You want to hear me yell about something, you should listen to, as we record this, the most recent episode of the Twilight podcast.
It's amazing because if you think about, if you want to hear Miles yell about something, you're going to assume it's all of Twilight, and you would be wrong. He hasn't started yelling until like the past 2 episodes. And up until this, you really were trying to be like, you know what? I like Bella. I think this kid Jacob seems adorable. Edward's a bastard, but you know, who knows? And really was in good faith, like getting into it. And it wasn't until the end of New Moon that he has been like, what is she doing?
Fucking hashtag Team Jacob, y'all. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm choosing a side. Don't say nothing.
No implied spoilers. Yeah, so it's that one has been a lot of fun because even though I'm spoiled and I've read them and I've seen all the movies and I know exactly what's coming, like in the grand scheme, I haven't reread them for like a decade. So I'm going back in being like, oh no, forgetting about like elements that now are very problematic and upsetting that I completely had not noticed the first time.
Or pointless and going nowhere.
Yeah, well, you know. So that's a patrons only one. But
they're all great. All the shows that you do are really, really good.
Thank you.
I highly recommend them.
Class dismissed. Next week, Extraordinary League. Then, the week after that, Swamp Thing versus Ultron.
Smash Fiction is produced by Miles Schneiderman and production assistant Sharon Schneiderman, with logo design by Claire Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod at incompetech.com for our theme song, Hitman.
You can find us on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast and search for the Smash Fiction Podcast on Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube.
Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
Smash Fiction is made possible thanks to our supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/smashfictionpodcast. Please consider donating as little as $1 each month. It helps us keep the show going. And we have great rewards and extra content for those who help us out.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight.
I like how the match is technically over and we're still arguing it, but I feel like...
It happens all the time here.
Yeah.
It's true, though, because I genuinely feel like Umbridge would keep power better just because of the system, and that generally works better, though.
You convince yourself when you're, like, researching and writing your argument, because you're,
It's
like,
true.
living in the head so thoroughly of someone who believes, like, in one side over the other, that you really convince yourself, and you come into the match going, like, oh, man, like... You know, fucking, we've got a rock solid case, and then you guys come out being all smart and shit.
Smart. I know, it would be better if you didn't, but for anything, this actually is kind of like what it was when I worked at Bath & Body Works, and I came home with a whole bunch of
Okay.
That
lotion.
was real unexpected. All right.
I had a closet full of lotion because I sold it to people all day, and by the end of the day, I was like, well, I guess I need this one too. It's not like I don't have 35 others at home.
So I'm sorry, how is that like this match?
I'm missing the connection
I just
here.
wanted to talk about lotion. Why is that weird, guys?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I can't fault you on that.
Because you sell to yourself all day, and then at the end of the day, you've gotten yourself convinced. The
Marissa-
analogy is sound. Work with
Marissa, I keep telling you, you can't keep trying to do this backdoor pilot for your Lotion Talk podcast. Like, you gotta pull yourself up on your own,
Dan,
dude.
if I don't utilize your platform, how am I going to get anywhere? I can't.